Hello, I'm Patrick McGuinn from Drew University, and I'm here with Connie Fletcher from the Washington State Board of Education to talk about the Every Student Succeeds Act. Connie, could you start by telling us where Washington State is in the development of its ESSA plan?
We have had a change in our superintendent of public instruction. We had an election in November, and the former superintendent had the plan ready to go. In fact, was ready to file it right before the election. And the new superintendent decided that he wanted to hold off, open it up to public participation again, public comment again, and then submit it much later. And of course, since that time, even there have been developments at the federal level that have encouraged more states to hold off and submit their applications later. So it means that we're now recommendations that were made. We're not sure what will happen with the new superintendent. We do have a substantial opportunity to comment on it, and the outreach and the technical work group was done in conjunction with our State Board of Education. It was done in joint with that. So there's more work to be done, and so what I know now about the options, the choices that we have may change, although I don't think it's likely.
Okay, thank you. And compared to its predecessor, No Child Left Behind, ESSA gives states more flexibility and freedom to design their own plans and contains fewer federal mandates. In your mind, what are the most exciting opportunities or the most important areas of flexibility under ESSA?
The thing to keep in mind about No Child Left Behind was the punitive nature, the sanctions. I was at a school a week or so ago, Native American elementary school, as a matter of fact, who has been a required action district, and before that was under the SIG School Improvement Grant program. And while money comes along with that, it's the shame and blame kind of atmosphere. It's very demoralizing for the staff and for the students in the community too. So we have the opportunity now to change some of that. We're still obligated to do the bottom 5, identify the bottom 5%. But hopefully we can minimize the stigma that comes with it, because those school districts are trying as hard as they can under some very difficult circumstances. Of course, part of the other problem that we've got then is sustained funding for those. The AYP, when I'm originally from a very affluent school district, and yet most of our schools had to send out the letters saying that the school had not made AYP, which didn't make any sense at all. The other thing was that schools were required that didn't make AYP were required to set aside 20% of their dollars for parents who wish to transport their kid to another school. And it really, that's 20% of your Title I dollars is a lot of money. And certainly we can make better use of that.
Okay, thank you. And could you speak a little about what you see as being potentially the most distinctive or unique approaches or features of the Washington State plan as it evolves compared to maybe what other states are doing under ESSA?
We had already made a lot of changes in our state and actually had sent it through the legislature that set us up very well. Our Student Achievement Index is a good piece of work. That is the background, is the format then for our accountability piece, and that's been well received. There are a couple of changes that we'll need to be making as a result of the new legislation, but we're well set up for that. There will be some additional elements that we can insert, the non-academic factors that can be measures of of school quality, and those are exciting, and they're also controversial. A couple of them in particular. One is on chronic absenteeism, and that's one that will still likely be in our final plan, because there really aren't that many elements that you can put in the elementary school grades that we're already collecting data on. And that's one of the ideas, is that we don't want to create something new that they're going to have to, that we don't know how it's going to turn out. We do know the data on that, but it's very, very difficult for principals to know that they're being held accountable for something that they believe is really the parent's responsibility. So somehow we've got to develop new programs, new ways of reaching out to parents, provide professional development for our principals and teachers, and how to reach out to the families and get the kids there, because if they're not at school, they're not learning.
Okay, thank you. And you mentioned the Student Achievement Index in Washington State that you've developed. Are you including different metrics of student achievement there compared to what you used to use under the No Child Left Behind accountability
yeah,
system?
there will be a couple, and the chronic absenteeism will likely be one in the elementary. We'll be including ninth graders on track to graduate. That'll be documenting credits earned, and there will be we'll be adding, I believe, dual credits that are earned at the high school level in addition to graduation rates.
Okay, thank you. And one of the concerns in an era where the federal government is backing away from some of those accountability mandates is what will happen to equity and the push to close racial and socioeconomic achievement gaps out in states. Can you speak to the conversations that Washington State is having around that issue?
We have to keep reminding folks about why we have there are features in the law like the 95% participation in standardized tests. This is a big issue. We had a lot of students that opted out of standardized testing the last couple of years. They don't see the value in it, and unfortunately, it was not. Students were not encouraged to take the standardized tests in many schools, especially it seems like the more affluent a school was, the less likely the kids were to take the standardized test, which means that it really invalidates the whole standardized test for your state. And we need to remind the teachers and the principals that 95% was set because it was a civil rights legislation, and the 95% assures that we can't hide kids that are low performing in order to make the school look better or the district look better. So we need to. It's a moral obligation to try to make this work, to try to make sure that we see how every child is doing and hold schools accountable for all children and not just the ones that are easiest to teach.
Great, thank you. And how is from the state board level, are you thinking about capacity issues at both the state education agency level and the district level, and the additional resources or perhaps different kinds of resources that might be necessary to implement your ESSA plan?
I don't know that capacity has been an issue. I don't think that's top of mind. Certainly we've got education finance problems in the state of Washington. We're under court order right now to change our finance system, and so that's a general problem. But I'm not sure that ESSA is making the situation more difficult. I think it's giving us a lot more flexibility in how we can use our dollars.
And what aspect of the Washington plan, as you're developing it, do you think will prove to be the most controversial out in the state, or perhaps the most challenging to implement?
Well, the standardized test element of it, the 95% participation, are probably the ones that challenge us the most at the state board.
Can you talk a little bit about how in your state the process by which you're developing your ESSA plan and the efforts at stakeholder engagement that you're undertaking?
We had extensive stakeholder engagement from the beginning. They had, I think that was 7 regional meetings across the state. There were any number of focus groups that were held. There was a postcard campaign. Every place that they went, they would leave postcards asking people to fill it out with comments and concerns that they had and send them in. So I believe that we were ahead of the game, and compared to other states that we were held up as a model for that. Now they'll be opening it up again, and there'll be another series and there was also a series of meetings after the draft plan was produced. Now they'll be opening it up again, and I'm not sure exactly what the superintendent plans for additional outreach efforts, but I'm sure that it'll be in good faith. One thing we find out, we've always known this, is it's not possible to do too much outreach and to try to involve people too much. There's never enough involvement.
Okay, thank you. Well, this has been very informative to hear about your state's efforts. Are there any other important issues related to ESSA that I haven't asked you about that you think it's important to mention here?
I think that the states really need to be vigilant in the equity aspect of it. There's a lot more flexibility now than there was before, and we have to really be true to the intent of the law. Equity is a huge issue for our state and for our state board. It's the number one issue. Reducing the achievement gap is very, very serious. We need to make sure that the dollars need to go where there's the greatest need. I know in the early days, my home district would use dollars, and even though it wasn't, they weren't all Title I schools by any stretch of the imagination, but some of those dollars were spread across like peanut butter because it was the only resource that they had to do remediation for kids. And so we have to make sure that we really do target the resources where they're most needed. And that may mean that local school boards have to make some difficult political decisions. Community members may not understand why one school is has a lower staff ratio or more resources or whatever. But we need to put the dollars where they're most needed.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time and good luck with this work.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.